My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 32 years old, and I swear to God, everything I'm about to tell you is real. It happened 2 years ago in the middle of Green Swamp Wilderness Preserve, Florida. I wish I'd listened to the warning. It started as a weekend trip, just 4 of us. Me, my old Army buddy Travis, my best friend Ryan, and his girlfriend Jessie. Ryan was obsessed with urban legends, always chasing cryptid stories and internet horror nonsense. He had been talking for weeks about La Bruxa, a swamp witch that supposedly haunted the backwoods of Florida, stealing souls and driving people insane. I should have told him to shut up and pick a normal vacation spot. We set off in Travis's beat-up RV, a clunky relic that rattled like a tin can every time we hit a pothole. The trip was supposed to be fun. Campfires, fishing, and beers under the stars. Just some time away from the city. Instead, it became the worst night of my life. The first sign of trouble came before we even got there. At a gas station just outside the swamp, this old man sitting on the porch stared at us like we were already dead. He spat into a tin cup and said, "Y'all ain't got no business out there." Ryan, grinning like an idiot, asked if he believed in the stories. The old man's face darkened. Once you hear the singing, it's already too late. Travis laughed it off. Jessie rolled her eyes. I felt something tighten in my chest. We drove into the wilderness, deeper than I liked. No cell signal, no GPS after a while. Just miles of swamp. Trees like skeletal hands reaching toward the sky. It was nearly sunset when we finally parked the RV in a clearing by the water. The first thing I noticed, the silence. No birds. No bugs. Not even the hum of mosquitoes. Just dead air, thick with humidity and something I couldn't name. We set up a fire, cooked some canned chili, and cracked open a few beers. The tension eased. Even I started to relax. Then, just after midnight, Ryan disappeared. I woke up to Jessie shaking me. "Ethan, Ryan's gone." The fire was just smoldering embers, casting long shadows on the trees. Travis sat up groggily, rubbing his face. We found Ryan's boots and clothes neatly folded on a log near the water. His camera was still there, turned off. No tracks leading away, no sound. Jessie panicked. "We need to look for him, now." "Hell no," I said. "We wait until morning. We don't go into the swamp at night." But she wasn't listening. She grabbed a flashlight and stormed off. Travis and I had no choice but to follow. The deeper we went, the more wrong everything felt. The trees started to look the same, like we were walking in circles. My watch said 2:14 a.m., but the moon hadn't moved. Then we heard it, a woman humming. Soft, eerie, like an old lullaby. Travis froze. "That ain't Jessie." The light from Jessie's flashlight flickered in the distance. She screamed. We ran toward her, found her standing in a knee-deep pool of water, shaking. "I saw him." "Ryan?" She nodded. "He was standing right there, but his eyes were black, pitch black. He smiled at me." I turned my flashlight on the water, nothing but ripples. Travis grabbed my arm. "Ethan!" I turned. A woman was standing in the trees. She was impossibly tall, skin stretched tight over her bones. Her face was wrong, her mouth too wide, her fingers too long, and her eyes, black pits, empty. She smiled. The flashlight died. Something yanked Travis into the water. He screamed, thrashing as unseen hands pulled him under. I lunged, grabbed his arm. Jessie screamed beside me. I pulled, hard. Something let go. Travis gasped, coughing up swamp water, but his back was covered in deep claw marks, bleeding through his shirt. We ran. Somehow, we made it back to the RV. We barricaded ourselves inside, locked the doors, closed the curtains. Jessie sobbed. Travis groaned in pain. I checked the gashes on his back. They weren't just wounds. They were symbols. Ryan knocked on the door. Jessie moved to unlock it, but I grabbed her wrist. "Look at his eyes," I whispered. Through the window I saw him, standing in the moonlight, smiling too wide, his black eyes gleaming. "Let me in, guys," he said, his voice layered, his and something else. Jessie broke. "It's him! We have to let him in!" Travis, still weak, just muttered, Don't. I grabbed my knife. Ryan kept knocking, louder, then pounding. I stepped forward, gripping the handle, my heart slamming in my chest. Then Ryan stopped. Silence. I peeked out the window, gone. We didn't sleep. Every few minutes, I swore I heard whispering outside. Soft laughter, scratching on the walls. Around dawn, Jessie had had enough. She grabbed a backpack. "I'm going for help." I grabbed her arm. "No, you're not." She shook me off. "I can't stay in here, Ethan. I can't." She ran outside before I could stop her. She screamed. I bolted out after her. Nothing, just her flashlight on the ground. She was gone, vanished. Travis and I sat there in stunned silence. I wanted to cry, to scream, but I couldn't. Then Ryan came back. He walked right out of the trees, smiling, naked except for his jeans. His eyes normal again. His voice, his own. "What's wrong?" he asked. "You guys look like you've seen a ghost." Travis whispered, No. I clenched my knife. "Where's Jessie?" Ryan tilted his head. "Who's Jessie?" My stomach dropped. Travis lost it. He grabbed a tire iron and swung at Ryan, but Ryan moved, too fast, too fluid. He caught the iron mid-swing, smiled. "Don't do that, buddy," he said. I grabbed Travis and dragged him back toward the RV. We locked the door, boarded up the windows with what little we had left. Ryan sat outside, just sat there, smiling. Night fell again. Travis stopped responding. He was burning up, feverish, and then the humming started again. Ryan started laughing. I heard Jessie's voice whisper through the walls, "Ethan, let me in." I closed my eyes, held my breath. At some point, Travis stopped breathing. Morning came. Ryan was gone. Travis was cold. I didn't wait any longer. I ran through the swamp, not stopping, not caring what was behind me. I ran until I saw a road. A trucker found me, half crazed, covered in mud and blood. They never found Travis's body or Jessie's. They did find the RV, though. The doors ripped off, the inside covered in deep claw marks. And Ryan? He was on the news a week later, found wandering near the swamp. No memory of what happened. He doesn't remember me. But sometimes I wake up at night, and I hear the humming. My name is Daniel Holloway. I'm 41 years old, and I swear on everything I have left that what happened in Apalachicola National Forest was real. I don't drink anymore. I can't, because every time I do, I see that thing's face grinning back at me in the dark. I drove my old RV into the forest a few years ago, thinking I needed some time alone. After the divorce, I wasn't sleeping much. My hands shook if I wasn't holding a beer. My ex-wife, Lisa, said I needed help. But what I needed was space, silence. So I packed up my shit, took a few cases of whiskey, and drove out to the deepest part of Apalachicola, where no one would bother me. The road was bad, worse than I expected. The deeper I went, the more the trees closed in, thick moss hanging from the branches like dead fingers. I didn't see another car for miles. That's how I wanted it. Just me, the swamp, and enough liquor to make me forget why I was out there in the first place. I found a clearing near the water and parked. No cell service, no radio reception, just the sound of frogs and the occasional rustling in the brush. The air was thick, humid as hell, and the sun was already sinking. The first thing that went wrong was the RV's battery. I killed the engine, went outside to take a leak, and when I came back, the lights wouldn't turn on. No power, no reason for it either. The damn thing had been fine all the way there. I figured I'd deal with it in the morning. That night, I sat by the fire drinking, trying not to think about Lisa or the divorce or the fact that I had nowhere to go when I got back. Then the knocking started. Soft, like fingertips against the metal. I turned my head slowly toward the RV. Nothing. Probably a branch, I told myself, or an animal. I went inside, locking the door behind me. I laid down on the small cot listening. Knock, knock, knock. I sat up, my breath caught in my throat. It was coming from the other side now, near the back window. I grabbed my flashlight and yanked open the curtain. Nothing but darkness. I shut the curtain, turned over, and tried to sleep. At some point in the night, the radio turned on. It hadn't worked in years. The damn thing was busted, fried from an old battery issue. But now, it crackled with static, and through it, a song started playing. A song Lisa used to love. The lyrics were wrong, though. The voice singing was off, slow, stretched, like someone mimicking a record player at half speed. I yanked the power knob. The music stopped. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I went outside to check the engine. That's when I saw the footprints. Not mine. They circled the RV, stopping right outside my window. Bare footprints. Too long, like the toes had been stretched out. I told myself it was some local screwing with me, someone trying to scare me off. I decided I'd had enough of that spot, so I packed up to leave. Got in the driver's seat, turned the key. Nothing. The RV wouldn't start. I opened the hood, checked the wires. Everything looked fine, but it was like the engine was just dead. Like the damn thing had given up. I was stuck. That's when I saw the man in the trees. Far off, just standing between the pines, his head tilted like he was watching me. I called out, but he didn't move. I took a step forward. "Hey, buddy, you lost?" He took a step back, fading into the shadows. I ran toward where he had been, but by the time I got there, the trees were empty. No footprints, no broken branches. Nothing. I went back to camp, locking myself in the RV even though I knew that wouldn't do much. I spent the rest of the day trying to fix the engine, trying to find some rational explanation. Then the knocking came back. But this time, it was coming from the door. I froze. Knock, knock, knock. I swallowed hard, gripping the handle of my knife. "Who's there?" Silence, then a voice, low and calm. "Danny?" My breath hitched. "Lisa." I backed away from the door. The handle rattled. "Danny, let me in." My hands shook. My head felt light. I hadn't spoken to Lisa in weeks. She wasn't here. She couldn't be here. I peeked out the window. She was standing there, Lisa. In the blue dress she wore the night she left me. Her hair down, her lips curled in that soft little smile she used to give me when we were happy. I squeezed my eyes shut. I was hallucinating. The booze, the stress, that was all it was. When I opened my eyes, she was closer, right outside the window, smiling too wide, her lips curled back, revealing too many teeth. I screamed and threw myself back. The knocking stopped. I didn't open the door. I didn't sleep. The next day I tried to hike out. No matter how far I walked, I always ended up back at the RV. By sunset, I was losing my mind. Then the park ranger showed up. He came walking down the path like nothing was wrong, clipboard in hand. "You lost, sir?" I ran up to him. "Jesus, man, you gotta help me. My RV's dead. Then I saw his badge. Holloway, my last name. I stepped back. "What the hell?" He just smiled. "You're not supposed to be here, Danny." I ran until my lungs burned, but no matter which way I went, I always ended up back at that damn RV. That night, the radio came on again. This time, it wasn't music. It was a voice. Deep, laughing. "You're almost ready to let go." I covered my ears. "Shut up! Shut the hell up!" The mirror in the RV cracked, and my own face smiled back at me. "Danny," it whispered, "you know why she left." I backed away, shaking. No. You were driving drunk." The air went out of my lungs. "You crashed." I shook my head. No, she left me." My reflection grinned wider. She didn't leave. She never left. And then I remembered. The rain that night, the headlights spinning, the crunch of metal. I never called the cops. I passed out, woke up in the wreckage. Stumbled home, convinced myself she'd just left. But she was still out there, somewhere in the swamp, buried. I fell to my knees, my head in my hands. The voice whispered in my ear, "You can stay here, Danny, or you can let go." I don't know what made me do it, but I grabbed the bottle of whiskey and smashed it against the RV's floor. I lit a match. The fire spread fast. The voice screamed. The last thing I saw before I passed out was Lisa standing in the flames, smiling. I woke up on the side of the road. My truck was there, the road was dry, the sky was clear. I drove out of that forest and never looked back. But sometimes at night I hear the knocking, and when I look in the mirror, I see my own face smiling back. My name is Claire Matthews. I'm 29 years old, and I make a living traveling solo across the country in my camper van, documenting off-the-grid destinations for my blog. What happened to me in Ocala National Forest wasn't a story I wanted to write, but I have to. I don't know if I got out. I arrived at Ocala National Forest late in the afternoon, after a long drive through backroads and pine forests. It was my first time here, though I'd read about the area. People talked about disappearances, strange voices in the woods. I thought it was all folklore, the kind of thing locals tell to keep kids from wandering off. I found a clearing near a small lake and parked my van. It was perfect, isolated, quiet. Just me, my camera, and a few days of peace. The first sign that something was wrong happened within an hour. I was setting up my tripod near the van when I checked my phone for the time. 5:12 p.m. When I glanced again, it was 8:45. I felt like I had blinked. I hadn't eaten, hadn't moved from my spot. The sun was still setting, but somehow 3 hours were gone. I shrugged it off. Maybe I was more tired than I realized. Maybe my phone had glitched. That night, as I was lying in bed inside the van, I heard something outside. A knock. Soft, deliberate. I sat up, heart hammering. I listened. Knock, knock. I reached for my phone. No signal. I took a deep breath and peered out the window. Nothing. Just the dark outline of the trees, unmoving in the still air. Then I saw them. Footprints. Bare, human footprints in the dirt, circling my van. The next morning, I woke up exhausted. I checked my camera, flipping through the photos I had taken the day before. Then I stopped. There were pictures I didn't remember taking. Blurry shots of my van, my own shadow stretching across the dirt. One of my bed, taken from inside the van. My stomach twisted. I had locked the doors. No one else was here. I told myself there was a rational explanation. Maybe I had set the camera on a timer. Maybe I was sleepwalking. Maybe. That afternoon I went hiking. The forest was dense, the air thick with humidity. I stopped to take a few shots of the moss-draped trees when I noticed something up ahead. A person, a woman, wearing my clothes. I froze. She was walking through the trees, her back to me. Same dark green jacket, same jeans, same brown hiking boots. "Hey!" I called out. She stopped, turned. I couldn't see her face, just a blank, featureless void where it should have been. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping my camera. When I looked again, she was gone. I ran back to the van. I locked the doors. I pulled the curtains shut. That night, my reflection started acting strange. At first, it was subtle. A delay, a flicker. I turned my head, and for a split second, the reflection didn't. Then it smiled. I didn't. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking. I took a selfie just to be sure. When I checked the screen, the photo showed two of me. One standing behind me, watching. I threw my phone across the van and curled up under the blankets, forcing my eyes shut. In the silence, I heard something outside. My own voice. "Claire, let me in." I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. "Claire, I'm cold." I squeezed my eyes shut. The voice grew fainter. Further away, then, just before dawn. A text message from my own number. "Let me in." I packed up at first light. The van wouldn't start. The engine, the battery, everything was fine. It just wouldn't turn over. Like the forest had made up its mind, I wasn't leaving. I ran. I grabbed my pack and bolted down the dirt road, my breath coming fast and ragged. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to move. Then I saw her ahead of me. She was standing in the middle of the road, waiting. She was me. Same clothes, same face, same eyes. She smiled. And I felt it, like something inside me was pulling, unraveling. Like she was taking something I didn't know I was losing. I turned and ran the other way. The road looped. I ended up right back at my van. I don't know how long I sat there, shaking. The sun was setting again, and I was afraid to close my eyes. That was when I saw the notebook. Mine. Lying open on the dashboard. The pages were filled with my handwriting, but I hadn't written them. They weren't words. Just one sentence. Over and over. "I am Claire." My hands went numb. I heard the knocking again. Soft, gentle. A whisper right against the door. "It's okay now, you can let go." I clenched my teeth. Shook my head. The whisper became a laugh, a soft, breathy giggle, like she knew something I didn't. The world went black. When I woke up, I was outside, lying in the dirt, barefoot. My footprints led back to the van, but I didn't remember walking. I got up slowly, my head pounding. Something felt wrong. I checked my reflection in the van's side mirror. It moved a second too late, and it was still smiling. I don't remember how I got out. I must have walked. A trucker found me on the side of the road, dazed, covered in dirt. I told him I was lost, that my van had broken down. He drove me to the nearest town. I never went back, but sometimes when I take a picture I see something in the background. A shadow, a figure, a woman wearing my clothes, smiling. My name is Nick Reynolds. I was 29 years old when it happened. I don't tell this story because I want to. I tell it because I need to. People need to know what's out there, what's hiding in the places the maps call wild and empty. I used to think nothing scared me. I don't think that anymore. It was supposed to be a week-long RV trip through Florida's backwoods. Just me, my girlfriend Lisa, my best friend Tommy, and his buddy Trevor. We had planned it for months, an escape from the city, from our jobs, from reality. Tate's Hell State Forest sounded perfect. Isolated, beautiful, untouched. A little too untouched, as we would soon learn. The trouble started before we even reached our campsite. We were deep in the forest when the RV jolted violently, throwing Lisa against the window. The sound of crunching metal and hissing air followed. I slammed on the brakes. "What the hell was that?" Tommy asked, his hands gripping the dashboard. I jumped out to check. The front tire was shredded, destroyed by a row of rusted nails hidden beneath a layer of leaves and mud. Someone had put them there. "This isn't normal," Lisa muttered, standing beside me. Her auburn hair clung to her face in the humid air, her green eyes scanning the trees like they were watching her back. Who the hell booby-traps a road? Poachers? Tommy guessed. Or just some asshole wanting to mess with tourists. Trevor, the quietest of us, crouched near the tire. We're stuck. He wasn't wrong. We had no cell service, no spare, and no way to call for help. The nearest ranger station was a long, miserable hike away. I suggested we camp for the night and figure it out in the morning. Everyone agreed, though Lisa looked uneasy. That night, things got worse. It started with the noises. At first, I thought it was just the wind moving through the trees, but it wasn't. I heard whispers, low, breathy voices, laughter, the kind of laughter that didn't belong. "Did you hear that?" Lisa whispered, gripping my arm. "Yeah," I admitted. Tommy unzipped the tent. "The hell is out there?" Trevor was already up, staring into the darkness. "Footsteps," he murmured, "barefoot." We found the prints in the morning. Large, human, but wrong. Too long, too narrow, like someone had been walking on the edges of their feet. They circled our campsite, never coming closer than a few yards. Then we found the doll. It was sitting on a log near the fire pit. A small, crude thing made of sticks and twine, its mouth sewn shut with what looked like human hair. Lisa refused to touch it. No, this is some Blair Witch shit." Trevor picked it up, inspecting the dark stains on its arms. Dried blood. We should have left then. But we didn't. We were arrogant. We thought we could handle it. That afternoon, Trevor went missing. He said he was going to take a leak and never came back. At first, we laughed it off, thinking he was messing with us. But when an hour passed, we started searching. We found his flashlight lying on the dirt, the lens cracked. His footprints stopped suddenly, like he had been lifted off the ground. Lisa wanted to leave. Tommy agreed. I told them we had to find Trevor first, and then he came back. It was just before sunset when he walked into camp, his clothes dirty, his face blank. "Jesus, Trevor, where the hell have you been?" I demanded. "Got lost," he said. His voice was flat. "Wrong." Lisa grabbed my arm and whispered, "That's not Trevor." I laughed it off. I shouldn't have. That night, I woke up to whispering. I rolled over and saw Trevor sitting outside the tent, his back to me, mumbling to something I couldn't see. "Trevor?" He turned his head slightly, but not all the way. "Go back to sleep." I didn't. In the morning, Lisa pulled me aside. "Something's wrong with him, Nick." "Yeah," I admitted. "But what do we do?" "We leave, now." Before we could, Tommy went missing. We searched all day, shouting his name, finding nothing but broken branches and deep, sunken footprints leading into the swamp. "He's gone," Lisa whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Then we heard the scream. It was distant but unmistakable. Tommy, he was alive. He was in trouble. Trevor turned to us, grinning for the first time in days. We should go after him. Something about the way he said it made my stomach turn. Still, I grabbed a knife and a flashlight, and Lisa followed. We ran toward the sound, deeper into the forest. The air grew thick with the stench of rot. Then we saw the pit. It was a deep hole lined with sharpened sticks. Bones littered the bottom, human bones. And Tommy was there, bound and gagged, his eyes wide with terror. "Jesus!" I jumped down, cutting the ropes around his wrists. "Who did this to you?" Before he could answer, something hit me hard from behind. When I came to, Lisa was screaming. I was tied to a wooden post, my arms wrenched behind my back. The firelight flickered, revealing figures moving through the trees. Thin, half-naked men and women with hollow eyes and sharpened teeth. They grinned at me, their mouths smeared with blood. The cannibals. and standing among them, smiling like he belonged, was Trevor. "Trevor?" I croaked. He crouched beside me. "You shouldn't have come looking for Tommy." I struggled, but the ropes were too tight. Lisa was tied next to me, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "You were always the hero," Trevor whispered. "Always the one everyone looked up to. But out here, you're nothing." I spat at him. "You're insane." He wiped his face and smirked. "You'll see soon enough." The cult leader approached, his face covered in scars. He muttered something in a language I didn't recognize, then pointed at Lisa. 2 men grabbed her. She screamed. I thrashed against my restraints. "No, take me instead." Trevor leaned in. "That's not how this works." I did the only thing I could. I bit down on the rope, sawing at it with my teeth. The fibers tore against my tongue. Then I heard Lisa cry out in pain. I snapped. With a final yank, the rope gave. I ripped my arms free and grabbed a burning log from the fire. I swung it into the nearest cannibal's face, the heat peeling skin from bone. Lisa kicked the man holding her. I grabbed a knife from the ground and cut her loose, then we ran. The cult screamed behind us, their footsteps slamming against the dirt. I didn't look back. Somewhere in the chaos, Trevor shouted, "Nick, wait!" I turned and saw him standing at the tree line, his face twisted in something like regret. "Please," he begged. "I didn't want this." Lisa raised the knife. I hesitated. Then I saw his smile flicker back. I stabbed him in the throat. We found the road just as a truck came around the bend. The driver nearly crashed, trying to avoid us. We never spoke to the police. There was nothing to find. No evidence, no bodies, only nightmares. And sometimes, late at night, I think about Trevor, and I wonder if I really killed him. My name is Ethan Carter. I was 32 years old when it happened. People think journalists are fearless, but that's not true. We chase stories because we want to expose the truth. The problem is, sometimes, the truth is something you were never supposed to find. This happened in Devil's Millhopper Geological State Park, Florida. I'd driven my RV out there, looking for a fresh start, or at least that's what I told myself. The truth was, my career was in shambles. A failed expose on a corrupt politician had left me blacklisted from every major news outlet. No one wanted to hire a journalist who fabricated evidence, even though I knew what I saw was real. So I ran, packed up my things and took a long drive through Florida's forests, looking for something, anything, to make sense of my life again. That's how I ended up here, parked on the edge of the massive sinkhole they call Devil's Millhopper. The locals told me not to camp too close. They spoke about strange noises, people who went missing, stories of voices calling your name in the night. I laughed it off. I didn't believe in that kind of thing. But I was a journalist without a job, and this was as good a story as any. I set up my RV, grabbed my camera, and hiked down into the sinkhole. The trail led into a deep, bowl-shaped pit, surrounded by dense trees and waterfalls trickling from the limestone walls. It was beautiful in a way that made me uneasy, like something ancient was watching me. An hour in, I found something I wasn't expecting. A backpack. It was lying near the base of a tree, half covered in mud, the zipper broken. Clothes were strewn around it, along with a phone. Cracked, battery dead. A woman's ID peeked out from the front pocket. Sarah Bennett, age 27. I stared at it, my stomach twisting. Had she just left it here, gotten lost? Then I heard the scream. It came from deeper in the woods. A sharp, ragged cry that cut through the silence and stopped just as suddenly. I ran toward the sound. The trees grew thicker, and the path became harder to follow. I forced my way through, my breath loud in my ears. Then I stopped. A man stood just ahead, near the base of the sinkhole. He was tall, lean, wearing an old flannel shirt and jeans that were too clean for someone who had been hiking. His hair was slicked back, his skin pale. He smiled. "You shouldn't be here." I hesitated. "Did you hear that scream?" He tilted his head. "What scream?" I held up the ID. "This girl. She lost her bag out here. Did you see her?" The man stepped forward. "Maybe. A lot of people get lost here." Something about him put me on edge. His smile was too wide, too knowing. I backed away. "I should get back," I muttered. His grin widened. "Of course. I'll see you soon, Ethan." My blood went cold. I hadn't told him my name. I turned and walked quickly back to my RV, refusing to look back. That night, I locked the doors, checked the windows twice, and tried to sleep. But I couldn't. At some point, I heard something outside. A soft tapping on the RV door. My heart pounded. I grabbed my flashlight and crept to the window, peering out. No one was there. Then, in the reflection, I saw movement behind me. I spun around, but the RV was empty. The next morning, I found something scratched into the dirt just outside the door. "Let me out." I packed my things. I was leaving. As I stepped outside, I nearly ran into someone. It was the man from the woods. "Leaving so soon?" he asked. I stepped back, gripping my keys. "Yeah, something feels off here." His expression flickered just for a second, like he was disappointed. "That's a shame. You were supposed to stay longer." I forced a laugh. "Guess I'll have to come back some other time." He stared at me. Then he grinned again. "You've been here before." My stomach clenched. "What?" "You don't remember." He took a step forward. "You were here last year, same RV, same excuses, but last time you didn't leave." My fingers tightened around my keys. "I don't know what the hell you're talking about." "You will," he whispered. I jumped into the RV, locked the door, and started the engine. The man didn't move. He just watched me. As I drove away, I caught one last glimpse of him in the side mirror. He wasn't smiling anymore. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. That night, at a gas station an hour away, I found something in my back seat. A phone, cracked, battery dead. Sarah Bennett's phone. I never went back to Devil's Millhopper, but sometimes when I close my eyes I hear his voice. "You've been here before." My name is Michael Grayson. I was 34 years old when it happened. I'd been living out of my RV for the past 6 months, traveling across the country, writing about forgotten places and hidden gems. It was supposed to be an escape from my ex-wife, from my old life, from the custody battle I knew I was never going to win. This happened in Little Talbot Island, Florida. I picked the spot because it was quiet, off the beaten path, and beautiful in a way that most beaches weren't. No high-rises, no tourists, just rolling dunes, thick patches of forest, and the endless stretch of the Atlantic. Perfect for the kind of travel blog post I was planning. I pulled into the campsite late in the afternoon. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the sand. The ranger at the entrance had given me a strange look when I told him I was camping alone. "Storm's coming in," he said, eyeing the darkening sky. "Might want to stay closer to town." I shrugged it off. A little bad weather didn't scare me. I'd been through worse. I parked the RV in a secluded spot near the dunes, set up my gear, and spent the evening taking photos. As the sky darkened, a thick mist rolled in from the water, swallowing the landscape. It happened so fast, like a wave crashing over the dunes. Within minutes, the world beyond my headlights was gone. That's when I saw them. 2 pinpricks of red light, barely visible through the fog, hovering just above the dunes. At first, I thought they were taillights from another camper's vehicle. but they didn't move. They just watched. I blinked and they were gone. I laughed to myself. Probably just my imagination. I'd been on the road too long. That night, I locked the doors and stretched out on the tiny bed in my RV, listening to the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. But sleep didn't come easy. At some point, I heard something. A soft, rhythmic scraping. I sat up, heart pounding. The sound came from outside, right next to the RV. I reached for my flashlight and crept toward the window, moving slow, careful. My breath fogged up the glass. I saw footprints in the sand, large, deep. They circled the RV, stopping right at the door. I yanked the curtain shut. The next morning, I found something else. A message, carved into the sand just a few feet from my RV. Don't run. The letters were long, jagged, like they'd been made with something sharp. I took a photo, my hands shaking. Maybe some asshole was messing with me. Maybe this was a local trying to scare off outsiders. Or maybe it was something else. I spent the afternoon hiking the trails, trying to shake the uneasy feeling in my gut. I kept telling myself there was a logical explanation. The wind, the tide, my own paranoia. But then I found the tent. It was buried beneath the dunes, half collapsed, the fabric shredded. Inside there were old camping supplies, a torn sleeping bag, and a journal. The pages were damp, the ink smudged, but I could still read some of the entries. Something is watching me. Every night it gets closer. I saw the eyes again. They never blink. I tried to leave, but the tide... I keep walking in circles. I don't know if it's me or this place, but I can't find my way out. It waits until I'm too tired to fight. I can hear it breathing. I closed the journal and stood there, heart hammering. Had someone else been here before me? Had they gotten out? As the sun set, I made a decision. I was leaving in the morning. That night, the power in my RV flickered. The radio crackled, the station tuning itself, static giving way to something else. A voice. My own voice. Stay, stay, stay. I lunged forward and turned the radio off. My reflection in the dark screen stared back at me, but for a split second I swore. I saw it blink. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it. Something just outside watching. At some point, I heard scratching. Not at the door. On the roof, something was up there. I held my breath, gripping my pocket knife, listening as the slow, deliberate movement shifted above me. Claws against metal. Then silence. Then a voice. My own voice, whispering from just beyond the RV. Mike. I didn't move. Mike, let me in. I pressed a hand over my mouth. It sounded exactly like me, like I was standing right outside. A shadow passed across the window. I didn't sleep after that. By sunrise, I was ready to go. I threw my things into the RV, turned the key, nothing. The engine was dead. I sat there, breathing hard, trying to stay calm. I had jumper cables. I could fix this. I could get out. Then I heard footsteps. Slow. Dragging. I turned my head and saw them. The red eyes. Not just one pair. 3, 4, 5. They hovered above the dunes, blinking in and out of existence, moving closer. I grabbed my flare gun and bolted out the door. I ran. Not toward the road, but toward the beach. The tide was high, the waves crashing against the shore. If I could just make it to the water, maybe they wouldn't follow. Behind me, the footsteps grew faster. I turned, raised the flare gun, and fired. The light illuminated the dunes for just a moment. And I saw them. Tall, thin, moving wrong, like marionettes with their strings tangled. No faces, just those glowing red eyes and long, gaping mouths. Then they screamed. The sound was worse than anything I'd ever heard, worse than gunfire, worse than sirens, worse than the worst moments of my life. I turned and sprinted for the water. Then, nothing. The next thing I remember, I was in a fishing boat. An old man shaking me awake. "Jesus, son," he muttered. "What the hell were you doing out there?" I looked back at the shore, but the beach was empty. The dunes undisturbed. They were gone. Or maybe they had never left. I never went back for my RV. Never even tried. I didn't care about my gear, my laptop, my camera, because when I checked my phone later, I found something that made my blood run cold. A photo. The last picture I had taken. Me, standing on the beach, and behind me, half visible through the mist, the red eyes. Watching. Waiting. I don't know what they are, but I know they're still there. My name is Mark Holloway. I was 42 when this happened, and if I could erase the memory, I would. Lisa had begged me to take this trip. "We need this, Mark," she had said, her voice almost desperate. "You've been away too long. The kids barely know you anymore." She wasn't wrong. After another year overseas, I had returned home a stranger in my own house. Ethan, my 12-year-old son, barely spoke to me, always hunched over his sketchbook. Sophie, our 7-year-old, still smiled, still curled up in my lap, but I could feel the distance growing. And Lisa, well, Lisa and I had been slipping away from each other for a long time. So, against my better judgment, I agreed to drive the RV deep into Everglades National Park, where she promised we'd reconnect with nature. Our friend Caleb Ross, a survivalist and ex-Marine, had offered to come along, saying he didn't trust me to keep the kids alive in a swamp. I laughed it off at the time. I'm not laughing anymore. The campsite was isolated. Beyond the clearing, the swamp stretched endlessly. Thick mangroves, still black water, and the occasional ripple of something large moving beneath the surface. The heat pressed against my skin like a wet blanket. Mosquitoes attacked us in thick clouds. Night fell fast in the swamp. By the time we had the fire going, the only light was from the flickering flames and the distant glow of our RV's interior. That's when Sophie started talking to someone who wasn't there. "I don't want to play hide and seek right now, Lulu," she said, staring into the darkness beyond the trees. Lisa turned to her. "Sweetie, who's Lulu?" "My friend," Sophie said simply. "She lives here." Lisa laughed. "Is Lulu an alligator?" Sophie scowled. "No, Mommy, she's a girl. She's right there." Caleb exchanged a glance with me. "Kids and their imaginary friends, huh?" I didn't reply. My stomach had twisted into knots. Something about this place felt wrong. That night, Ethan woke me up. He stood at the foot of my bed, pale, holding his sketchbook. "Dad," he whispered, "someone's outside." I sat up, heart pounding. "You see someone?" He nodded and handed me the notebook. My blood ran cold. He had drawn a little girl, stringy hair, hollow eyes, and feet that didn't touch the ground. I grabbed my flashlight and slipped out of the RV. The swamp was silent. I swung the beam across the trees, my pulse hammering. Nothing. Then I saw them. Muddy footprints leading up to the RV door. Small, barefoot, my skin crawled. There were no other campers nearby. I forced myself to breathe, forcing logic into my mind. Maybe Sophie had walked outside. Maybe. But deep down, I knew better. The next morning, Sophie was gone. Lisa's screams jolted me awake. We tore through the RV, calling her name. Her shoes were still inside, but the door was unlocked, left slightly ajar. I ran outside, searching the ground for tracks. Near the water's edge, I found her stuffed rabbit, soaked and filthy. Panic took hold. I shouted her name, my voice swallowed by the swamp. Caleb was already strapping on his hunting knife. "We find her now," he said, "before night falls." We split up. Lisa stayed behind with Ethan, too hysterical to help. Caleb and I pushed deeper into the marsh, hacking through tangled vegetation, fighting the unbearable heat and swarms of biting insects. We searched for hours. I screamed Sophie's name until my throat burned. Then we found something. A shack, old, half-sunken, lost in the swamp. Caleb went in first. The inside was covered in child-sized handprints, smeared in something dark. My gut twisted. In the corner sat a pile of bones, small, brittle, human. Then I heard it, a child's voice. "Daddy!" I turned so fast my vision blurred. Sophie stood in the doorway, smiling. But something was wrong. Her eyes, they weren't her eyes. They were black, empty voids. "Baby?" My voice cracked. I stepped forward, but Caleb grabbed my arm. "That ain't her, Mark." Sophie giggled. It was not her laugh. It was something else's. The door slammed shut behind us. Something knocked me to the ground. My head cracked against the floor, the world spinning. Then, screams. Caleb's screams. I saw him being dragged into the darkness, his fingers clawing at the wooden planks. His face twisted in terror. "Mark, help me!" I lunged forward, but hands, too many hands, burst from the shadows and grabbed me. Darkness swallowed me whole. I woke tied to a chair. The shack smelled of rot. The walls were covered in drawings, dozens of them, scrawled in childish hands. Then the whispering started. "She's ours now," a voice cooed. I looked up. Lisa stood before me, but it wasn't Lisa. Her eyes had gone dark, her mouth twitching with a grotesque smile. I struggled against my bindings. "Lisa? What the hell?" "She belongs to Lulu now," she sang, rocking on her heels. "And Lulu wants to play forever." Ethan was in the corner, frozen, clutching his sketchbook. Then I saw it. The newest drawing. A family of 4 standing in the swamp. But I wasn't in it. Instead, there was a new father. A tall, shadowy figure with no face, holding Sophie's hand. A cold dread filled my chest. Lisa, or whatever had taken Lisa, tilted her head. "You have a choice, Mark." She leaned close, whispering in my ear. "One of you stays, one of you leaves." My pulse thundered in my skull. I turned to Ethan. His eyes were still his own. I made my choice. I roared and lunged, knocking Lisa backward, toppling the chair. My bindings loosened just enough, and I ripped free, grabbing Ethan by the arm. Lisa shrieked. No, something inside her shrieked, a sound so unnatural it made my ears ring. We ran. I didn't stop to look back. We burst from the shack, sprinting toward the RV. I saw Caleb, bleeding, barely standing. We piled in, slammed the door, and I jammed the key into the ignition. The RV roared to life. Lisa stood at the edge of the swamp, smiling. Behind her, in the trees, dozens of children stood watching. Their hollow eyes followed us as we tore out of that God-forsaken place. We never found Sophie, but a month later, Ethan was sketching again. I glanced at his notebook and froze. He had drawn Sophie, standing at the swamp's edge. Behind her, in the trees, the children waited, smiling. She was still there. My name is Eric Maddox. I was 38 years old when this happened. If you're reading this, I want you to promise me one thing. Never go into Apalachicola National Forest alone. I had spent years debunking myths. Ghosts, witches, urban legends. None of them had ever stood up to scrutiny. My YouTube channel had blown up after I exposed the haunted Bellhaven Asylum as nothing more than faulty wiring and wind drafts. So when I heard about the bone collector, I thought it was just another backwoods boogeyman. A local legend. A few missing hikers turned into something supernatural. I was wrong. I parked my RV deep in the Apalachicola National Forest, just off an overgrown section of the Garden of Eden Trail. The place was deserted, no other campers, no rangers, No noise except for the wind in the pines. Perfect. I set up cameras and motion sensors, tested my thermal imaging, and checked my drone. The goal was simple. 3 nights in the forest, investigating the myth. I'd prove the bone collector was a story, upload my footage, and rake in the views. But by the second night, I knew something was watching me. It started small, a faint whistle in the distance, slow and deliberate, drifting through the trees. I assumed it was the wind. Then I found the doll. It was outside my RV, carved from wood no more than 6 inches tall. The detail was unsettling. A tiny backpack, a small camera around its neck. It was me. I scanned the woods, my flashlight cutting through the mist, but there was no one. My cameras hadn't caught a damn thing. The next morning, I hiked deeper into the forest. I found an old tent, half rotten and abandoned. Inside there were clothes, a rusted knife, a canteen, but no sign of the owner. Just a bone. A human jawbone. I wanted to believe it was an animal, but it wasn't. That night, the whistling came back, closer. I set up infrared cameras around my RV. If someone was screwing with me, I'd catch them. But at 3:12 a.m., my motion sensor beeped. Someone was standing outside my RV. I grabbed my knife and checked the monitor. Black and white static. My expensive night vision cam was glitching out. But for a split second, I saw something. A figure in rags, standing just outside the frame, motionless, watching. I burst out with my flashlight, heart hammering. Nothing. Just trees and fog. But when I turned around, another doll sat at my RV's door. This one had its eyes gouged out. I should have left. I should have packed up and sped the hell out of there, but my ego told me to stay. I paid the price. The next morning, my tires were slashed. Deep, deliberate cuts. My keys were gone. I searched for them for hours, but it was like they'd vanished. With no choice, I started hiking toward the main road, my GPS acting up, my compass spinning uselessly. Then I saw it. A cabin, half hidden in the trees. Old, rotting. I knew the story said the bone collector had a workshop deep in the woods. I told myself it was just an old hunter's shack, but inside I found bones. Piles of them, stripped clean and arranged in strange patterns. Some looked human. The walls were covered in dolls, all carved from wood, all missing their eyes. My breath caught as I saw a fresh one, a perfect match for my face. Then I heard the whistling. It was inside the cabin. I turned, knife drawn, heart pounding. Something slammed into me from the dark, knocking me onto the dirt floor. Rough hands gripped my throat, pressing me down. I kicked, struggled, feeling cold breath on my face. Then everything went black. I woke up tied to a chair, my wrists bound with old rope. The cabin was silent except for the sound of something moving in the dark corner of the room. A man, or what used to be a man, stepped into the dim light. His face was hidden behind a burlap mask, stitched together with thick, black thread. His clothes were ragged, caked in dirt and dried blood. "The bones talk," he whispered, his voice like a rusted blade scraping metal. "They tell me who stays and who leaves." I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry. He stepped closer, tilting his head, examining me, studying. I saw the knife in his belt. My pulse roared in my ears. "The forest takes what it's owed," he murmured. "The others, they didn't listen." I forced myself to breathe, think, plan. Then I saw it. The rusted blade on the floor, half hidden beneath a pile of bones. He turned away for a moment, humming that damn tune. I lunged, kicking my chair forward, grabbing the blade with my bound hands. He turned, too slow. I drove the rusted metal into his thigh. His scream was inhuman. I ran, bursting through the door, sprinting into the woods. The trees blurred around me. My lungs burned. I could hear his footsteps behind me, and then headlights. A truck just ahead. A hunter stood by the driver's side, rifle slung over his shoulder. I stumbled toward him, gasping, "Help, please!" The hunter looked at me, expressionless, calm. Then I saw the wooden dolls hanging from his rearview mirror. My stomach dropped. The hunter whistled the same tune. I barely had time to scream before something struck me from behind. Darkness. Weeks later, a new hiker found a wooden doll on the forest floor. It was me, smiling, waiting. My name is Nathan Bishop. I was 41 years old when this happened, and I don't expect anyone to believe me. Hell, if I weren't the one telling this story, I wouldn't believe me either. I had spent my entire career as a marine biologist, specializing in Florida's underground rivers and swamp ecosystems. I knew the science of these waters, the tides, the wildlife, the way nature worked in perfect, predictable patterns. But what I saw in Tate's Hell wasn't science, it wasn't natural. I took this trip to be alone. My divorce had been messy, my reputation in the academic world was in tatters, and I had nothing left but my camera and my RV. I told myself this would be an escape, a week-long trip through the swamps of Tate's Hell State Forest, documenting Florida's lesser-known river species. I parked my RV deep in the forest, near an old dirt road that led to the Ochlockonee River. No cell service, no tourists, no noise, just me, the trees, and the black water stretching into the fog. The first 2 days were peaceful. I kayaked through the river, took photos of egrets, turtles, gators. The stillness of the place had a weight to it, like a place the world had forgotten. But by the third night, the stillness turned into something else. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Rotting fish, algae, something decaying, thick enough to make me gag. But the river was clear, the banks undisturbed. I checked my kayak, my supplies. Nothing. That night, I woke up soaked in swamp water. I jolted, upright in my RV bed, my shirt clinging to my chest, my hair dripping. I knew I had locked the door, but when I checked, it was wide open. Muddy footprints leading from the river to my bed. Not mine. I told myself I must have sleepwalked. It had happened before. Stress, exhaustion, logical explanations. But then I found the footprints leading back outside. The next morning, I went out to the river with my camera, determined to catch whatever was messing with me. The water was still, untouched. But as I raised my camera, I noticed something strange in my reflection. I was standing still, but my reflection wasn't. It shifted, lagging behind me, like an old video buffering. My breath hitched. I waved my hand. The reflection followed, but slower. I stepped back, shaking. Then I saw her. At first, I thought it was a log floating just beneath the surface. But then long strands of red hair rose up through the water, tangled and drifting. I squinted, my heart thudding. The shape beneath the hair shifted, a pale face rising from the depths. A woman. Her eyes were dark, empty pits, and her mouth, it was stretching, wider and wider, rows of jagged teeth spiraling into the void. I stumbled back, my foot catching on a tree root, and I hit the ground hard. When I looked up, she was gone. The water was still, the air was dead silent. I grabbed my camera, hands shaking, and checked the photos. Nothing. The water was empty, but I knew what I saw. That night, the whispers started. I was in my RV, writing notes, when my radio crackled to life. Static, then a faint, wet voice. "Come in the water." I froze. My radio was turned off. The voice whispered again, closer this time. "Nathan?" My blood turned to ice. I grabbed my knife, stepped outside, scanning the tree line with my flashlight. And then I heard it. Sloshing footsteps, dragging through the water. I swung my light toward the river. She was standing in it, waist deep, staring at me. Her skin was gray, slick with algae, her red hair floating unnaturally around her face. But her mouth, God, her mouth, was stretching open, her jaw unhinging like a snake's, black void inside like she was about to swallow the night whole. I bolted inside, locked the RV, and forced myself to breathe. I told myself it was a dream, a hallucination, a trick of the swamp gas. But when I woke up the next morning, my tires were slashed. My boat was half sunk in the river, and outside my door, the muddy footprints were back. I had to get out. I threw my things into my bag, my hands shaking. I could hike to the main road, find help, call a tow truck. But as I stepped outside, I saw something half buried in the mud beneath my RV. I swallowed, digging with my hands, pulling until my fingers found something solid. A skull. But not just any skull. It had a crack along the temple, a missing molar. I knew that skull. It was mine. I dropped it, scrambling back, my heart hammering against my ribs, and then I heard her voice. "You've been here before." I spun, and there she was, standing at the edge of the trees, grinning. Memories slammed into me, flashes of something I couldn't explain. I saw myself arriving in the RV, setting up camp. I saw her dragging me into the water, her nails slicing into my arms. I saw myself screaming, drowning, sinking into the red-stained depths, and then nothing. And then, waking up in my RV on the first day of the trip, over and over and over. I wasn't on my first trip. I had been here before, and I had died here before. I staggered backward. No, this isn't real. She laughed, her voice like breaking glass. It will be, again. The world blurred, the trees spinning. The last thing I saw was her hand reaching for me, then blackness. I woke up in my RV. The morning sun was rising. My boat was fine, my tires were untouched, my camera was in its case, the memory card empty. It was the first day of my trip. But when I looked in the mirror, my reflection lagged. And outside, in the river, the red woman waited. My name is Dan Carter. I was 41 years old when this happened. I should have never gone into that swamp. It was supposed to be a fresh start, just Michelle and me. One last chance to fix our broken marriage. She thought if we got away from everything, my drinking, the fights, the memories of that firehouse call that still kept me up at night, we'd remember what we used to be. Travis, my old friend, suggested Big Cypress. "It's quiet, off the grid," he'd said. "No distractions. Just you, the wife, and nature. I'll even come along for moral support." I should have said no. We picked up Caleb on the road. He was 19, scrawny, nervous. He had that jittery look that kids get when they've been running from something. Said he was escaping an abusive stepfather. He had a black eye, so I believed him. Michelle thought we should help. Travis didn't care either way. We set up deep in the preserve, miles from the nearest ranger station. No tourists, no cell service, just towering cypress trees and the wet stink of the swamp. It was beautiful in a way, but there was something off about the air. Too still, too heavy. The first sign that something was wrong was the noises. They started the first night. Whooping calls in the distance, strange and guttural. Not animal sounds. Not human either. Michelle thought it was an echo, some trick of the swamp. Caleb wasn't so sure. He claimed he saw something watching us from the trees, but when I looked, there was nothing there. The next day, I found something worse. A skull, half buried in the mud near our camp. Not an animal's. Human. I showed it to Travis. He just smirked. "Probably an old hunting accident," he said. "Nothing to worry about." Michelle wanted to leave. I should have listened to her. That night, the noises got closer. Scratching against the RV walls. Footsteps in the brush. I sat outside with my hunting knife, my heart hammering. At some point, I must have dozed off, because when I woke up, Caleb was gone. We searched for hours, calling his name, but the swamp swallowed our voices. Then we heard it. Screaming. A sharp, panicked cry, cut off too soon. We ran toward the sound, but all we found was his torn-up shirt nailed to a tree. "This ain't right," Michelle whispered. Travis stayed quiet. We went back to the RV. The air felt thick, suffocating. I locked the doors, gripped my knife tight. Sleep never came. Then, around 3 a.m., something changed. One moment I was lying there, staring at the ceiling. The next, I was awake, but not in bed. I was tied to a tree. Thick, coarse rope bit into my wrists. My head pounded. I could hear the wet, slapping sounds of something moving in the dark. And then, Travis, standing there, grinning. "Sorry, buddy," he said. "We're all just trying to survive." A shadow moved behind him. A figure stepped forward, tall, gaunt, its face hidden behind a mask of human bone. More of them emerged from the dark, filthy and wild, their bodies scarred, some missing fingers or ears. Cannibals. I thrashed against the ropes, but they were too tight. "Where's Michelle?" I rasped. Travis just chuckled. "She's with them now. They like the women fresh." Rage burned in my chest. "You son of a bitch!" He crouched in front of me, tilting his head. "Listen, Dan. These people, they've been here for centuries. They own this swamp, and they don't let outsiders leave." A scream pierced the night. "Michelle!" I saw red. I tore at the ropes until my wrists bled. The cannibals laughed, clicking their teeth together like a sick kind of applause. Then one of them got too close. I lunged, biting down on his ear. He shrieked, recoiling. And in that moment of chaos, I twisted my body, snapping the branch I was tied to. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed a rusted machete from the nearest cannibal's belt and swung. The blade bit deep into his neck. Blood sprayed warm against my face. The others howled, lunging for me, but I was already running. I tore through the swamp, my breath ragged. My legs burned, but I didn't stop. I followed the screams. I followed her. Then I saw it, a clearing lit by torches. Wooden cages stacked like livestock pens, blood-stained bones littering the ground. And Michelle, bound, shaking, her face streaked with tears. A man stood over her, taller than the rest, the leader. His skin was covered in swirling scars. In one hand he held a jagged knife. "Stop!" I bellowed. He turned, his lips curling into something too wide to be a smile. Then Travis stepped out of the shadows. "I told you," he said. "They don't let outsiders leave." Something in me snapped. I charged, swinging the machete. I caught Travis in the side, and he went down screaming. Michelle kicked the leader in the gut, scrambling away just as I lunged. The blade buried into his chest, and he laughed, actually laughed, before crumpling. The others hesitated. Their leader was dead. They didn't know what to do. We ran. I grabbed Michelle's hand, dragging her through the swamp. We found Caleb, locked in a cage, bloody but alive. The cultists came after us, screeching in fury. We ran until we reached the river, where a half-rotted canoe was half sunk in the reeds. We pushed off, paddling with raw, shaking hands. Behind us, figures stood at the tree line watching. Not chasing, just watching. By the time we reached a ranger station, I collapsed from blood loss. I woke up in a hospital. The police found nothing. No camp, no bodies, just our burned-out RV. Travis's body was never recovered. Caleb disappeared from the hospital 2 days later. Weeks later, Michelle and I tried to move on. Then I got a text, an unknown number. We never forget our own. My name is Jack Eldridge. I was 48 years old when this happened. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I know what I saw. I had been living out of my RV for almost a year by then, drifting from place to place, trying to outrun my grief. My daughter, Lacey, had died in a car crash 16 months earlier. I was at home, drunk on the couch when it happened. I should have been there. I should have picked her up. But instead, I got a call from a state trooper at 2 a.m. Withlacoochee State Forest was the last place she had wanted to go. She had been obsessed with ghost stories, always reading about haunted places and local legends. A few weeks before the accident, she told me about a witch that haunted the forest, some woman who lured people in and made them disappear. "You should take me sometime," she had said. But I never did. So I went alone. I found a secluded spot near an overgrown trail, parked the RV, and shut everything off. No radio, no news, just the forest and me. The stillness wrapped around me like a cocoon. For the first time in a long time, I almost felt at peace, until the sun went down. The first thing I noticed was the silence. No crickets, no wind. The trees didn't sway, even though I could feel the air moving. It was the kind of quiet that presses in on you, makes your ears ring. Then my radio crackled on. It was a police transmission. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the words. "This is dispatch, 911 caller reporting a vehicle collision on Highway 19. Possible fatality. Over." My hands started shaking. That was Lacey's accident. That was her crash. Then another voice broke through the static, whispering, "You don't have to be alone." I turned the radio off. The static kept going. I stepped outside, the hair on my arms standing on end. My breath puffed in the cold air. There were footprints in the dirt leading away from the RV, barefoot, small, like a child's. They led into the woods, and I swear to God I heard Lacey laugh. It was light, airy, her laugh. I hadn't heard it in over a year, but I knew it like I knew my own heartbeat. I should have run. I should have gotten in the RV and never looked back. But I didn't. I followed the footprints. They led me deep into the trees, down paths that hadn't been walked in decades. I stumbled over roots, my flashlight beam flickering as I moved forward. The laughter came again, closer now. Then I saw it, a house. It sat in the middle of a clearing, old and rotting, like something out of a nightmare. Spanish moss hung from the roof like curtains. The windows were broken, the door slightly ajar. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and something sour, something rotten. I stepped over broken floorboards, my breath shallow. The walls were covered in carvings, symbols I didn't understand, deep gouges in the wood, like someone had scratched them in with their fingernails. Then I saw the mirror. It was covered in dust, leaning against the wall. My reflection was dim, barely visible. But as I wiped the glass clean, my breath stopped. Because I wasn't looking at myself. Lacey was staring back at me. She was wearing the same hoodie she had on the last time I saw her. Her hair in a messy bun. Her eyes were wet, pleading. She opened her mouth. But it wasn't her voice that came out. "Trade places." I stumbled back, knocking over an old chair. My reflection was normal again. Just me, wild-eyed and shaking. Then the laughter turned into screaming. Outside, the trees moved. Their branches twisted like arms, their trunks bending in ways that weren't natural. And through them, something stepped forward. A woman. She was tall and thin, her tangled black hair matted with moss. Her skin was pale, stretched too tight over her bones. Her eyes were black, bottomless pits, but I could feel them pulling at me. She smiled. "Come to me." My body wouldn't move. The air turned thick, pressing against my chest. I gasped, trying to force my legs to run, but they wouldn't. Then I heard Lacey again, crying this time. She was out there. I knew she wasn't really, but God, it sounded like her. Dad? I ran. I bolted through the trees, branches slashing my face, my breath ragged. I didn't look back, even when I heard her following me, her steps soft, deliberate. I reached the RV and slammed the door, locking it. My heart pounded as I backed away, my eyes locked on the window. She was standing there, just outside, smiling. The RV shook. She was trying to get in. The windows rattled, the walls groaned. And then, silence. I sat there until the sun came up. I don't know how long. I don't remember sleeping. When morning came, she was gone. I started the engine and drove until I hit pavement again. I didn't stop until I was 50 miles away. A few nights later, I got a text, an unknown number. We never forget our own. My name is Ethan Graves. I was 35 years old when this happened. I've been living in my RV for 2 years now, moving from place to place, always searching for the next quiet spot. I tell myself it's for the photography, the landscapes, the wildlife. But deep down, I know the truth. I don't want to be around people. Green Swamp was just another stop. A place to set up for a few days, get some good shots, and move on before anyone noticed I was there. The land stretched for miles, thick with palmettos and cypress trees, the kind of wilderness that swallowed people whole. I liked that. I shouldn't have gone so deep. I parked off a narrow dirt road, past the designated campsites. It was illegal, but no one was going to find me out there. The first day was uneventful. Just me, my camera, and the slow creep of the Florida heat. I hiked a bit, set up my gear near a clearing where I'd spotted a barred owl, and returned to the RV before sundown. Then the noises started. At first, I thought it was an animal. A rustling in the palmettos, a soft shifting sound like something moving just out of sight. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out, expecting to catch a raccoon or a stray hog. There was nothing there. The trees stood still. The wind didn't move. But the feeling in the air, it was heavy, charged, like something was watching. I locked up and tried to sleep, but the feeling stayed. The next morning, I checked my camera trap. It was gone. I'd left it mounted to a tree just 20 feet from the RV, aimed at the clearing. But the strap had been cut clean through, not torn, not broken. Cut. I swallowed my unease and chalked it up to poachers. I'd seen plenty of them in places like this, setting illegal traps or hunting without a license. Maybe one of them didn't want me filming. Then I found the footprints. They were barefoot, large, deep, leading into the palmettos. I turned back to the RV and spent the rest of the day inside, revolver within reach. That night, something woke me up. A single deliberate tap on the window. I didn't move, I barely breathed. Tap. Tap. I reached for my flashlight, my fingers trembling, and flicked it on. The beam cut through the dark, landing on the window. There was nothing there. The palmettos rustled, though there was no wind. I stayed up until dawn. The next morning, I decided I'd had enough. I packed up, tossed my gear in the RV, and turned the key. The engine didn't start. I tried again. Nothing. I checked under the hood. Everything looked fine, but the battery was completely drained. Impossible. I'd just driven here 2 days ago and everything had been working fine. I took out my solar charger and hooked up my phone, but it was dead too. I swore under my breath. I needed to hike back to the main road and flag someone down. I grabbed my revolver, my backpack, and a canteen and started walking. The forest felt different. Smaller, somehow. The trees leaned closer, their branches arching overhead like ribs in a carcass. The palmettos whispered as I passed. An hour in, I saw something up ahead. A figure standing between the trees. My breath caught in my throat. It was tall, impossibly thin, its arms hanging too long at its sides. The sun was behind it, casting it in silhouette, but something was wrong with its face. There was nothing there, no eyes, no mouth, just smooth, empty skin. I blinked and it was closer. I didn't think, I ran. I crashed through the underbrush, my heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't stop until I saw the RV again. I locked the doors, drew the blinds, and sat with my back against the wall, my revolver clutched tight. I wasn't alone out here. The sun dipped low. The trees stretched long shadows across the ground. Then the radio turned on. At first, just static. But underneath, something else. A voice, faint, garbled. I turned the dial, trying to tune it in. It was my own voice. I froze. The radio crackled, and I heard myself speaking. "It's here, I see it." Then another voice, low, whispering, right against my ear. "Don't look at me." I threw the radio against the floor. The static didn't stop. Something slammed into the RV, the walls shook, the windows rattled. I gripped the revolver, sweat dripping down my back. Another hit, harder this time. A shadow passed over the window. I clamped my eyes shut. "Don't look at it, don't look." A whisper curled through the air, pressing against my skin. "Trade places." The air turned heavy, thick like water. My chest felt like it was caving in. Something brushed against the door. The handle rattled. I swallowed a scream. Then, silence. I sat there for hours, unmoving. The whispering never came back. When dawn finally broke, I threw the door open and ran. I ran through the swamp, my legs burning, my lungs raw. I ran until I stumbled onto a dirt road and collapsed. A hunter found me hours later, dehydrated, delirious. He radioed for help. When I told him where I had been, his face paled. You were in his part of the woods. I didn't ask who he was. A week later, I went back for my RV. The engine started on the first try. The battery was fine. My phone turned on, fully charged. I checked my camera. Most of the photos were normal. Trees, the clearing, the swamp. Then, the last one. It was me, sleeping in the RV, taken from outside the window. I left Florida that night. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear the whisper, "Don't look at me." My name is Ethan Shaw, and I was 32 years old when I barely made it out of Blackwater River State Park alive. I still don't know how to explain what happened out there, at least not in a way that people would believe. The authorities wrote it off as a drug operation gone wrong. A tragic accident, a simple case of wrong place, wrong time. But I know better. It wasn't an accident, it was a hunt, and we were the prey. It started with a road trip, just 4 of us in an old RV looking for adventure. My girlfriend Harper had read about a hidden waterfall deep in Blackwater's woods. She wanted to film it for her travel vlog, a series she called Lost Florida. Her best friend Sarah tagged along. And then there was Jake, my childhood buddy, a guy I hadn't seen in years. He was the one who found the special campsite, promising it was off-grid, untouched, a place few had ever seen. I should have questioned that. I should have questioned a lot of things. The first sign something was wrong came at a gas station just outside the park. Some old man, wiry, sunburned skin stretched too tight over his bones, watched us fill up. When I went inside to pay, he followed, stepping up close behind me in line. "Ain't nothing out there but hungry things," he murmured. "Y'all best stick to the marked roads." I turned to get a better look at him, but he was already shuffling toward the door. I told myself he was just another backwoods local, one of those people who hated outsiders. Florida was full of them. I didn't say anything to Harper or Sarah, but Bo, my old Labrador, had his ears pinned back the second we pulled into the trees. That dog never barked unless there was real danger. But that night, sitting by the fire outside the RV, he wouldn't stop growling at the woods. Then the generator died. Jake cursed, claiming it was a fuse, that he'd fix it in the morning. But I saw him pocket something small and metallic when he thought I wasn't looking. He had a satellite phone. Why the hell would he need a satellite phone? I didn't get to ask, because that's when Sarah found the bones. At first, I thought they were deer remains, maybe a boar. But then I saw them up close, yellowed with age, small finger bones tangled in the dirt, like someone had tried to claw their way out of the ground. There were teeth marks on them. Human teeth. Harper wanted to leave. I agreed, but Jake? Jesus, you guys are paranoid, he laughed. There's a town like 20 minutes from here. If people were getting eaten out here, don't you think someone would have noticed? Harper wasn't convinced, but she wanted that waterfall. Just a little longer, she said. Just one more day. I wish I'd forced her to go. Later that night, I woke to something moving outside. It wasn't footsteps. It was heavier, dragging, like someone pulling a body through the leaves. Then a whistle, high and piercing, sharp enough to make Bo's hackles rise. It came from deep in the trees, but then, too fast, it was right outside the RV. I grabbed the rifle I kept under the bed, but when I yanked the curtain aside, nothing was there. I should have woken everyone. I should have packed up right then. Instead, I told myself it was just an animal. By morning, Harper was gone. We found her camera first, smashed on the ground, covered in blood. Then Sarah screamed. A trail of drag marks led from our campsite into the woods. I grabbed my rifle. Jake didn't grab anything, because he already knew. We have to find her, I said. We won't, Jake muttered. His face was pale, guilty. If they took her, she's already dead. Who the hell is they? Sarah snapped. Then the whistle came again, and the woods erupted. Figures lunged from the brush, skinny, fast, masked in animal skulls. One grabbed Sarah, yanking her by the hair. Another slammed into me, knocking my rifle away. I heard Bo yelp in pain, then silence. And then something cracked against my skull. Darkness. I woke up in a dirt cellar. The air was thick with the smell of rot and blood. I tried to move. My arms were tied, my legs bound. Across from me, Sarah was slumped against the wall. She was barely conscious. Her right hand? Gone. I fought the nausea, clawing up my throat. They had cut off her hand. She was losing too much blood. If I didn't get us out, she was dead. Then the door creaked open. An old man stepped in, Pa Merritt, that's what he called himself. His eyes were milky, his smile too wide. "We don't waste nothing out here," he said, holding Sarah's severed hand up like a prize. She's still got more to give, though. Maybe a leg next. I lunged at him, rage drowning out the pain in my skull, but the rope held tight. Pa Merritt just laughed. "Patience, boy," he murmured. "You'll get your turn." Then Jake walked in, untied, unharmed. "I'm sorry, man," he muttered. "I didn't have a choice. I wanted to kill him right there with my bare hands, but I didn't have that option." Jake looked at me, real regret in his eyes, but not enough regret to stop him from handing over Harper. "They get her, and I go free," he said, voice shaking. That was the deal. And just like that, they dragged Harper out of sight. I don't remember much after that, just rage. A blinding, burning rage that fueled me past the pain. I don't know how, but I snapped my thumb out of its socket, slipped the rope, and tore through the nearest guard. I grabbed his knife. I grabbed Sarah. I hunted Harper down. She was tied to a table, screaming as one of them hovered over her with a meat saw. I shot him in the back of the head. Then all hell broke loose. Sarah couldn't run, so I threw her over my shoulder. Harper grabbed a shotgun from the wall, blew another cultist apart, and we ran. The others chased us, howling, crawling on all fours like animals. And Jake, we found him outside, blocking our path. "I didn't have a choice," he whispered. I put a bullet in his gut and left him to die. We stole a truck from their farm and plowed through the trees. They were still running after us when we hit the highway. When I looked back, they were gone. The police found nothing. No bodies, no cellar, no sign of Pa Merritt or his family. Sarah died in the hospital. Harper stopped speaking. And me? I know the truth. They're still out there. And they're still hungry. My name is Noah Grayson. I was 38 years old when I lost myself in the woods of Apalachicola National Forest. Maybe you've heard of it, the kind of place where people go missing, where the trees swallow them up and no one ever finds a body. I used to think that was just stories. Now I know better. I was there to take photographs, wildlife mostly. I'd been working on a personal project to capture a Florida panther on film. Something rare, something real. My divorce had been finalized 6 months earlier, and I'd been drinking too much, avoiding people. I figured a solo trip into the woods would clear my head. I parked my RV off a small, unmarked road deep in the forest. I wanted to be isolated, away from the usual trails. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and I felt good for the first time in months. Just me, my camera, and the quiet. The first night, I woke up to a sound outside, a soft, deliberate shuffling. I sat up, listening. It was close. I reached for my flashlight and shone it through the window. Nothing. But when I stepped outside to check the ground, I saw footprints in the dirt. Barefoot, large. Too large to be human, but with toes too distinct to be anything else. Something had been standing right outside my RV, watching. I told myself it was an animal. A bear, maybe. I went back inside, locked the door, and slept with my knife under my pillow. The next day, I set up a few trail cameras and went out hiking. The forest felt wrong. Too quiet. No birds, no wind, just my own breath and the crunch of leaves under my boots. A few miles from camp, I saw movement between the trees. A man. He was maybe 50 feet away, partially hidden by the undergrowth. I called out, but he didn't respond. That was when I saw his clothes. They were mine. My same green jacket, my same cargo pants. A chill crawled up my spine. I took a step closer. He did the same. I lifted my camera to get a better look through the zoom lens. The moment I did, he was gone. Just vanished. I hiked back faster than I should have, feeling watched the whole way. By the time I reached the RV, the sun was setting, casting long black shadows through the trees. I locked the doors, turned on every light, and tried to convince myself I was just seeing things. Then I found the boot, lying next to my fire pit. My boot. I checked my feet. I was still wearing both. Someone, or something, had an identical copy. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard something walking outside. The next morning, I checked my trail cameras. The first few just showed me, walking through the woods, setting up my gear. But one of them, the last one, it was me, standing dead still in the middle of the trail, staring at the camera. For hours. The timestamp showed I'd been there from midnight until nearly dawn. But I hadn't. I had been in the RV. Asleep. I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. I turned off the camera and packed up my gear. I needed to leave. I grabbed my keys from the counter. They were gone. I searched every inch of the RV, overturning bags, checking my pockets, the floor, the bed. Nothing. That's when I heard my own voice, right outside the RV. You were gone a long time. My stomach dropped. The voice was identical to mine, but the tone was wrong. Flat. Empty. I turned toward the door, knife in hand. The voice came again, right against the thin metal wall of the RV. Let me in. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the door. watching the shadow move across the frosted glass window. It was my exact height. I backed away, my heart hammering. There was no way in hell I was letting it in. Then the door handle began to turn. I lunged forward and slammed the lock down. Silence, then slow, deliberate footsteps moving away. I waited for what felt like hours before I finally looked outside. The forest was still, empty. I had to get out of there. With or without my keys, I grabbed my emergency kit, my camera, and a flashlight, and I started walking. The nearest main road was 10 miles east. If I could reach it, I'd find someone, flag down a car, get the hell out. But I never reached the road. Somehow, no matter how long I walked, no matter which way I turned, I ended up back at the RV, like the forest had twisted itself around me. That's when I saw the second me, standing at the edge of the trees. It grinned, my grin, but too wide, too unnatural, the corners of its mouth stretching too far up its face. I felt something deep in my chest break apart. I wasn't getting out of here, not unless one of us died. I gripped my knife, every muscle in my body screaming with fear. The thing tilted its head, watching me. Then it spoke. "You don't belong here anymore." I ran. I don't remember deciding to, I just did. I ran straight into the trees toward anything but that thing. Branches tore at my skin. I tripped, fell, hit the dirt hard. My head rang. I was dizzy, my vision blurry, but when I turned to look behind me, I saw myself, pale, hollow-eyed, begging. "Please," it whispered, "you have to listen. I'm the real one. It took me weeks ago. You're the copy." My breath hitched. My chest felt tight. My head ached. Was that true? Was I the fake? I scrambled backward, my pulse pounding against my skull. I had to decide. It lunged. I didn't think. I drove my knife into its throat, deep, twisting. It gurgled, choked, and collapsed. I stumbled away, panting, shaking. I felt sick. My head buzzed. My thoughts didn't feel like mine. But I was me. I was the real Noah, wasn't I? I don't remember getting out of the woods. I just remember waking up in a hospital bed. Dirt under my nails. Blood caked to my arms. A ranger had found me wandering the roadside barefoot, clothes torn. They told me I'd been missing for 6 months, but I was only in the woods for 3 days. Right? Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't always recognize the face staring back. And sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I hear my own voice whispering from the closet. "You made the wrong choice." My name is Daniel Mercer, but most people call me Danny. I was 42 when I drove my RV deep into the heart of Withlacoochee State Forest, looking for solitude. What I found instead was something I can't explain, something that should never exist. I'd been a firefighter for nearly 20 years before I quit, not by choice. My last call had ended in tragedy, a house fire that took my partner's life. I got out. He didn't. Survivor's guilt, they called it. I just called it a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. So I decided to disappear for a while, park my RV somewhere off-grid where no one could find me. Not my ex-wife, not my old station buddies, not the therapists who kept insisting I process my grief. I wasn't interested in healing, I just wanted silence, but silence wasn't what I found. The first night I woke to a scream. Not just any scream, a sound so sharp, so full of pain that it sliced through my skull like a damn ice pick. It sounded like a woman, but not exactly. There was something wrong about it. Too shrill, too stretched, too long. I bolted upright, heart pounding. Outside, my fire had burned low. The woods beyond my RV were pitch black, too still. The sound had stopped, but the ringing in my ears remained. I told myself it was an animal. Maybe a panther, maybe a fox. I knew better, but I forced myself to believe it. Then I heard footsteps. Slow. Circling the RV, I grabbed my flashlight and flicked it on, aiming it out the window. Nothing. Just trees and shadows. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I stepped outside and saw something strange. A few feet from my fire pit, the dirt was disturbed, like something had been standing there for hours. Watching. I shook it off, blaming my own paranoia, and spent the day hiking. The deeper I went into the forest, the quieter it became. No birds, no insects, just that thick, dead air pressing against my ears. I nearly tripped over it, a burned-out structure, small, almost like a shack. It wasn't on any maps I'd checked before coming here. It looked old, but not ancient, maybe a couple of decades, judging by the way the wood had blackened and split. I stepped closer, kicking at the ashes. That's when I saw the names. Carved into the charred floorboards, scratched deep into the wood like someone had done it with their bare nails. Some were worn away by time, but others... I froze. One of them was mine. Daniel Mercer. I stepped back fast, my pulse hammering. I'd never been here before. No one knew I was here, and yet there it was. My name, burned into the bones of this ruined place. Something rustled behind me. I turned too fast, nearly falling. My flashlight flickered as I scanned the trees. Nothing. But then, through the dense undergrowth, I saw it. A figure watching me. It was only there for a second, just a flicker of movement before it melted into the shadows, but my gut twisted at the shape of it. The way it stood, the way it leaned just a little too far forward, like it was waiting for me to speak first. I didn't. I ran. I got back to my RV at dusk, out of breath, every nerve in my body screaming at me to leave, but when I reached for my keys, they weren't there. I tore the place apart, searching. The countertops, the drawers, my backpack, nothing. Like they had just disappeared. Then the radio crackled. I hadn't touched it, hadn't even turned it on. But now it was hissing with static, cutting in and out like a half-tuned station. I stepped closer, heart pounding. The noise sharpened. Mercer. I stopped breathing. "Help me!" A woman's voice. Ragged, full of pain. Distant, like she was speaking through a tunnel that stretched beyond time. Then the screaming started. It blasted through the radio at a deafening pitch, so loud and shrill that I dropped to my knees, clutching my head. It was inside me, rattling my skull, vibrating through my teeth like my bones were coming apart. My nose started bleeding. I reached up and ripped the radio out of the dashboard. Silence. My whole body shook as I stared at the radio in my hands. My ears were still ringing. My skin felt raw. I was leaving. Right now. I grabbed my emergency bag and a flashlight and bolted outside. I didn't care about the RV anymore. I'd hike out to the road, flag down a car, whatever it took. But the second my boots hit the dirt, I froze. Because standing at the tree line, illuminated by the last sliver of dying daylight, was her. Blackened, skin sloughing from her face, eyes hollow pits of darkness. She screamed. My flashlight exploded in my hand. The sound sent me crashing to the ground, gasping for air. My lungs felt like they were on fire. My vision went white. When I could finally see again, she was gone. I don't know how long I lay there. When I finally pulled myself up, my whole body was trembling. I turned toward the road, forcing my legs to move. But no matter how far I walked, I always ended up back at the burned clearing. Like the forest had twisted itself around me, like I'd never left. A part of me knew then, knew that I wasn't getting out of here. The woods whispered my name. And then, I saw myself. Standing at the edge of the clearing, near the wreckage of the burned shack, my own face, my own eyes, but wrong. The copy of me smiled. Not a normal smile, too wide, too sharp. Like the skin was splitting just to stretch the mouth that far. I took a step back. The other Danny didn't move. Instead, he lifted his hand and pointed. I turned, and the burned woman was standing right behind me, her mouth opened. I never heard the final scream. I just remember the fire, The heat swallowing me whole, the crackling of my own flesh peeling away, the sound of my own voice joining hers burning in agony. And then, nothing. Days later, a ranger found my RV, burned down to the frame. No body inside, just my name, carved into the trees. And the radio, still playing a soft, distant scream.